6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I thank all the witnesses for being here today. I found it incredibly interesting. And it really brought to mind a day that I spent in the riding with a woman who invited me to spend the day with her. Her name Karen, who lives her life in a wheelchair. And so she put me in one too, and we rolled around a small part of one of the communities I represent. First of all, I have muscles in my arms and my shoulders that I didn't even know existed until that day. But what was really powerful about that was just looking at all the small things that really excluded her. And one of the things she sent me home to always carry with me is that when you make things accessible, it's better for everyone, regardless of if you're able-bodied or not. And that really hit home for me, is that everything that we can do as human beings to make life more accessible just opens doors that we may not know are closed. So, you know, we've heard things today here about the importance of relationship building, the challenges that can be provided if you're not together. And I really appreciate what people are saying. This is not all or nothing. This is about creating a way to include people that might be excluded because of things beyond their control. So I'm going to ask all three of you, if I can start with Ms. Dillon first, to just talk about how is this going to open doors? What are codes of conduct or practices that we can do that will create opportunities for relationships? Because I keep hearing sort of this blockage to relationship instead of how can we explore how to build relationship, even if people participate sometimes virtually. And I just want to recognize that two things for myself is most of our members are sitting in the House. I mean, people look at the camera every day, you see people. The majority of our members are already here from every party. And the other thing is that I actually found virtual parliament, when we were totally in virtual parliament, the decorum went up in some ways, because if you were yelling at someone, you had to turn on your mic and your picture was in front. So there isn't the same mentality as when you're in a group yelling. So I just want to acknowledge those two things and just ask specifically around, do you have recommendations about how we can make relationships if we're virtual, and how do we include people, and how will this make it accessible? And if I could start with you, Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. I think that's an important observation, that the performative aspect is really diminished when people are joining from home or from a different location, when you're joining through a remote context. You're really more focused on the task, and you are bringing a form of yourself that is not tied to looking a certain way, sounding a certain way, and participating by default in perhaps an adversarial type of manner. It's just really harder to do that performative approach when you're on your own in an office, for instance. And I think that there's a real opportunity to increase relevance, responsiveness, and demonstrate evolution here, and showcase Parliament as a modern contemporary democracy by drawing on technologies, testing, seeing what works, as I mentioned. Do a pulse check. What is and isn't working for MPs? There are a range of different tools available to communicate. It's not just virtual meetings. There are instant messaging platforms that you can use for this. We have seen an increasing number of companies, nonprofit organizations, universities, and other entities draw on technologies like Zoom, Google Meet, Slack, other project management types of softwares. These are not expensive tools, and they are worthy of testing. And again, bringing that intentionality to the in-person opportunities is really key. And it's also important from a democratic perspective to offer the choice. That is the dominant theme in the future of work discourse right now. If we're looking to bring the best and the brightest to lead us in our democracy, it is a non-starter that there be a hybrid option to the conditions of work. And it's really important for us to consider that in terms of relevance, evolution, and modernization, and efficiency as well.
Thank you. Honest talk.
Thank you for the question. I come back to the notion that hybrid parliament is covered by a number of gray areas in the sense that it's not black and white. I very much doubt that parliamentarians will elect to just stay home when they have a duty to serve their country and strengthen their democracy. This is about flexibility. It's about options. It's about being able to work remotely if that's what needs to occur to accommodate your personal obligations or your family obligations. We can look to corporations all across Canada that have modernized their workplaces and have done so very successfully and fiscally positive, in a fiscally positive way, and adopt those models and utilize those best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've had women in the House of Commons for 100 years, and still only 30% of MPs are women. And I think that all of us should be concerned about how to increase representation, and that comes into inclusion and accessibility. And of course, when we talk about those numbers of women with intersectional identities like Black women, Indigenous women, women of color, LGBTQ, and so on, are even less represented. And it is about accessibility to some extent. Statistics Canada tells us that women are twice as likely to take on caregiving responsibilities, even if those women are working full-time outside the home. And so I think this is an issue that can help increase representation in the House.
Thank you.
Thanks.